to save America, but to help his friends. And once you understand that, then you understand there's no, just because they're going to do this does not mean the United States will not collapse economically. They don't care if the United States collapses economically. Number 4, I'm from New Zealand, which is a country that's not been mentioned in your lectures, although all your charts seem to show that New Zealand will be quite badly affected by the Iran war. Do you see New Zealand joining NATO in the fight against Ukraine? I read news that billionaires are building bunkers in New Zealand. Does that mean we will be somewhat safe from future conflicts? What will New Zealand do? I'm just an everyday citizen wanting to do the best for my children here. Okay. New Zealand is an interesting, because New Zealand is very much like Canada and Australia. Okay, these 3 places, New Zealand, Australia, Canada. They're not nation states. They are resource colonies of the British Empire. Okay, meaning that they are owned, literally owned by the British. So their resources, their wealth belongs to the British. And so what's happening in these countries right now is a corporate restructuring where the population is being replaced. All right, the populations there have become lazy, complacent. And so they're importing millions of new immigrants, primarily Indians, but also a lot of Chinese, a lot of Filipinos, to replace the population. Because in a time of economic decline, you need your colonies to perform better. All right? So I don't see New Zealand participating in any wars, but I do see New Zealand, the population being replaced by immigrants. Okay, and this will probably lead to a lot of civil conflict in these places. All right. From Demi, you mentioned how you used to live with your parents, play video games, and feel disconnected from the world. Was there a particular book, philosophy, or work of art that inspired you towards the path you're on now? What concrete advice do you have for a younger man who feels aimless and nihilistic, who want to get back on a spiritually productive path? Okay, this is a really hard question for me to answer. Yes, it is true that in my late 20s, I was very depressed and I felt that life was hopeless, and I feel as though you have to go through stages like this in your life. So it's not something to be avoided. It's something that you'll have to suffer through. And when you hit rock bottom, you instinctively or you intuitively understand that I need to move on in my life. Okay? So during this time period, what I did was I engaged in a period of self-reflection in which I questioned my assumptions about the world. I went to Yale University, and after I went to Yale University, I thought the world was meritocratic. It was logical that if you worked hard, if you have talent, then you succeed in life. And then after floundering through life in my 20s, I had many years where I became very depressed, and I just thought about my own life, and I recognized that I need to have a better understanding, a more nuanced understanding of how the world works. And this led me to the journey that has led me to today, okay? So failure is not something to be ignored or avoided or to be feared. It's something to be embraced, okay? Don't fear failure. If there's a work that has had the most influence on me these past 10, 20 years, it would be Dante, the Divine Comedy, okay? But that's very hard to read. So in mid-June, I will teach a 2-week seminar, line by line, close reading of Dante's Divine Comedy. And what I'm hoping to do is inspire people to engage in their own self-reflection and to think much more deeply about their own purpose in this world, okay? And hopefully this will help people in the future. Hey, from Alex. I don't disagree with the notion that AI is an occult project, but I find there's a curious similarity between what you call the occult and the sentiment of courage that a scientist or inventor must have in pursuing the development of some revolutionary technology that they truly believe is a benefit for humanity. I don't disagree with this. I think that if you want to be a true scientist, your imagination must involve the occult. If you're a great scientist like Isaac Newton was, you're not interested in like creating a patent or an invention that will make you build knowledge. You don't care about that. You want to know the mind of God. You want to change the world forever. That's what leads to tremendous inspiration and imagination. In your lecture on the Holy Empire of AI, you interpreted the quote from Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 as an invitation to start a secret society and to access a cult as a way to dominate the world. I don't necessarily disagree with your interpretation. However, I find a similarity between the passage you quote from Thiel and another book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. Exactly. So all these heroic figures in history, they all have similar characteristics. They all believe that they are on a mission, a secret mission from God, and they must create a movement around them in order to advance humanity. Yes. Okay. Yes. I don't disagree with your intuition, in particular about lumping the cult, society, war dominance, religion, and AI into one basket. Yet I point out that all true innovation is a cult in nature. I completely agree with this. You have to understand a cult if you want to be innovative. That's why I teach it. And the cult is agnostic to whether your intention is to access it for the benefit of mankind or to access it with the intention or dominate the world. Exactly. So when I teach starting, I teach people like, God has given us free will. Free will means you can do good, you can do evil. He doesn't care, okay? Doesn't matter. For everyone, and it just happens that the most visible tech voices seem bent on using technology to dominate the world. This is exactly correct, okay? So people who are truly innovative, there's a diversity among them. But the people who will succeed are those who are most aligned with power and control. Okay? So if you love making money, then guess what? You'll be successful. But if you want to help humanity, guess what? You won't be successful. Okay? So there's almost like a direction to history. If you follow that direction, you almost like a right away to power. So people who are extremely greedy, like Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Larry Ellison, they'll be much more successful than people like me, who's much more interested in educating people. Okay? And that's the reality of the world we live in. But the thing to remember is that God wants it this way, because only by giving us complete free will can we be truly imaginative. All right? And I could be doing what I'm doing unless there are evil people like Mark Zuckerberg doing what he's doing. All right? So what's important is the free will. All right, so Alan, can you help me read this, please?
Okay. A question from a 21U American male. Do you believe an American draft is still coming, Professor Jiang? Many young American men follow you, and those who are willing to take drastic action are left wondering what direction to go. If a draft is still coming, is it worth fleeing the US this summer? Do you have any general edition advice for young men? Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I do believe the draft is coming. But not only that, but I believe that the draft is coming to many countries, including Canada, Australia, Europe. And you think that the purpose of a draft is to fight a war. But you think about it deeply, the purpose of a draft is to reorganize society in a certain way. So in America today, what do young men do? Well, they buy Bitcoin, they gamble online, they're on OnlyFans, they don't want to work because the pay is too low, and this is a disaster for the country. Young men go to college, and for 4 years they drink beer and watch football games. And they don't learn anything, right? So you have this huge social problem on your hands that young men aren't contributing effectively to your economy. So what you do is you engineer a financial crisis, like the Great Depression, so that you're forced to work because your parents have no more money. And then you have a national draft to teach you skills that you will need in order to contribute more effectively to the economy, okay? So a draft doesn't necessarily mean that you go to war. A draft just means that you work for the government for like 5 to 10 years. And it's possible like they train you to be an engineer in the Navy. Believe it or not, but the best education you can possibly receive is often from the military, because unlike schools, they're incentivized to actually teach you something useful, okay? And it's often for free. So a draft is something that they need in order to basically train young men to be effective contributors to the economy. And it's something that many countries will adopt as well. If you just let young men do whatever they want, they're just going to play video games, spend all their money on OnlyFans, and gamble everything on Bitcoin, okay? And they don't really know anything useful. So this is a huge problem, and that's why they need a national draft to fix this problem. So should you run away if there's a draft? I already told you there's no place to run to, okay? Either you go to a nation with a draft, or you go to a nation which has even worse problems like famine, okay? So, I mean, what's important is to recognize that the world is changing. We're not gonna go back to the old world. Things are not gonna stay the same, and so you must embrace change.